Zoom, exacto.
Test, one, two. ¿Me
Te
oyes?
escucho bien. Sí, te escucho bien.
Ok, ya ves, ahorita me voy a hacer, ahora me voy a poner mute.
They can hear me? Hi, those on Zoom and on live stream. We're just waiting for hopefully a minion to arrive, so we'll start hopefully in a minute or two. Shabbat Shalom. Thanks, Joe. For what? Yeah, if you wait for a second, because if you get one more, we can start with you, and then hopefully someone else will start. I keep seeing movement thinking of someone, but it's the straps. It's a person. No, there were two people going into the gym. I don't know if I'm done. That out, and you're at the food cabinet? Yeah. You know what Minha is that? The Minha necessity. You're where? How about that? That's interesting. I learned that and ensure that there's not a minion. You can assume there's a minion of people in somebody's cemetery. It was asked to be walk the road with funeral or unveiling. There's some people, and it's not a cemetery. Everybody can assume that right over there, the religious people who have to be there. But not university of them. Hey. Yep. It might be on the 20th, 30th. So it's another hour.
Yeah, so maybe, you know what, let me go over and ask them.
Start at 6:30?
Yeah, should I go over?
That's my understanding. Yeah. I'm gonna choose over here, Anna. I mean, maybe they're set up.
They don't have to set up.
Anyone that's here to set up. Yeah, I like that. I will edit that. Likewise. laning is in the category of those that when you're rabbi in a small school for 9 years, where chief laning is just go. Hey! Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Really using the microphone more for the people on Zoom. I don't think you need me to hear me, but just as good. Mincha for Shabbat, page 214 in the Lev Shalem, in the Slim Shalom, Joey. 226. And the Slim Shalom 558. Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha, Od Yalu Chasela, Hashem Shekach Lo, Hashem Sharonai Elohav, Tila LeDavid Ramim Chalo, Emel Wachak B'Cholim Malachak. Tilat Adonai daber pi, v'yivarech kol basar shem kodsho le'olam ba'eh, v'anachnu barach ya, yatavi l'olam hallelujah, v'al tzion goel, shavei peshav yachinu Adonai v'nizor briti yotam, amar Adonai ruchi asher alecha u'barai asher samti v'picha li'emush v'picha bi. V'ata kadosh yoshev tilo Yisrael, v'karzel zev yamar, kadosh kadosh kadosh, Adonai tzvon chaaretz kevod, v'kablin demi amrin, kadish bishmei merom elashim. Vatisaini ruach vashmacharai kol rash gadol baruch Adonai mim kamo man ruach hashimit batrai kol zivsa Adonai imloch leolam boher Adonai tzvanim manim miskav lanu ekov Adonai tzvara shodam v'derech bach Adonai Hashem melchin enim koreinu. ויבטחו בך יודעי שמך, כי לא עזבת דורשך אדוני, עיני חפש למען צדקו, יגיל תורה ויהדיר. Please rise. יתגדל ויקדש שמי רבה, ימד ירחיותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומייכון, חייתך בית ישראל, לגלה בזמן קריב ימרו, אמן, יהי שמרם וברך. אלוהים אלמיה, יברך וישתבח, ויתפאר שמו ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל, שפני קדושה בריחו, ולם בכל ברכתה, ושירתה, תשוקה ונחמתה, תמירן בעלמה ויאמרו, אמן. ואני תפילתי, לך אדוני את רצון, אלוהים ברוב חסדך, ענני באמת אישך. Joey, would you open the ark? Thank you. Even so Aaron, Vayomer Moshe, Kumanai Futu Oivecha Be'anusu Mistanecha Mipanecha, Ki Mitzion Tetzei Torah, V'Adonai Yerushalayim, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Le'Moshe B'Kedushato. Gadlu Adonai iti, in Ramah Shemo Yachtav, Adonai Lagvar Lagvar. Does anybody have your site who wants an aliyah this week? Needs an aliyah? Okay. Parshat V'Zora Bracha. Joe, you have a page number?
1202.
1202. If you're following along from a Chumash at home, it's
Chapter 33.
Dvarim, chapter 33. V'tiga levet teira emachuto. Eleni bizman karov. Yachon pleitateidu pleitana mokbesh v'lechen lechas rachman somen amar. Amen. Hakol havu godel he nuchat udnucha voda Torah yahamod. Joe, you taking aliyah? Joel, aliyah? Yamod. Yoel ben Simcha Chanan. Rishona Baruch Shanatan Torah Limoshe B'Kedushato V'atem B'Gimochem Chaim Golchem Ayo. What's that? You don't want. Okay.
Baruch Hu Adonai Amvorah.
Baruch Rachman Ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Olam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Zot habracha asher berach Moshe ish Elohim b'nei Yisrael lifnei moto vayomar Adonai misinai ba v'zarach miseir lamo Hofia mehar paran v'ata merivo kodesh mimino eshtat lamo Av chovev amim kol kedosha v'yadecha v'hem tu kula raklecha yisa midabarotecha Torah tzivalanu Moshe Morasha Kilat Yaakov Vahiv Rishun Melech V'Tasef Rashayam Yachad Shivtei Yisrael Yechi Ruven V'Yal Yamot V'Hi Metav Mispar V'Zot Lihuda Vayomar Shema Adonai Kol Yehuda V'Lamot Tivienu Yadav Rav Lo V'Ezer Mitzarav Tiyeh.
Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch Ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Herb, second Aliyah. Alan Yamod. Avram ben Zev Ufarum Aliyah Shniya.
Page 1204, verse 8.
Baruch Hu Adonai Amvorah. Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Ulalevi Amar tu mecha v'urecha leish chasidecha asher nisito b'masa tirivehu almei meriva haomer le'aviv ulimo lo ritiv v'etechav lo hikir v'epanav lo yada ki shamaru imratecha uvritecha yinsoru yoru mishpatecha li'akov v'toratecha li'Yisrael yasimu ketorah be'apecha v'chalil amizbechecha Baruch Adonai Chelo Ufo Al Yodav Tirtzeh Mechatz Modnaim Kama Umisanav Minikumun Levin Yamin Amar Yedid Adonai Yishkon Lavetach Alav Chofef Alav Kol Hayom Uven Ketefav Shachen.
Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch Ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Samud.
Carmela.
Carmela.
Bat Georgia.
Bat me?
Bat Georgia.
Bat Georgia Aliyah Shlishit.
Page 1205, verse 13.
אוי, תודה. מה עושים עם זה? מנשקים? ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Yosef Amar Meforechet Adonai Artso Mimeget Shamayim Mital Mitahom Rovetz Atachat Mimeget Vuot Shamesh Mimeget Gerish Yirachim Umerosh Hareked Mimeget Givot Olam Umimeget Eretz Umloa Wurtzon Shochni Sene Tavot Alarosh Yosef Ukot Nazir Echav Bechor Shoro Hadar Lo Ikarne Re'em Karna Bahem Amim Yinagach Yachtav Avse Aretz Vehem Rivivot Ephraim Vehem Alpei Menashe.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי העולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה. I love you guys.
Let's get a chair. You alrighty, Stevie?
Yeah. This is still going to be a tough one.
Okay, we'll spot you.
Yeah.
Bezot HaTorah asher sa Moshe he said Israel api Adonai Moshe Eitz Chaim hi lamachadikim la'ameton ve'ameushar Eitz Chaim hi lamachadikim la'ameton ve'ameushar Derachei Adachenu Bechol Netivotei Shalom Derachei Adachenu Bechol Netivotei Shalom
What's that? Yeah.
Yalo Hashem Adonai, Ki Niskav Shemo Levado, Hodol Zashamayim Yaron Karen Liyama, Telcho Chasidav, Levnei Yisrael Kurovo, Hallelujah, David Mizmor, Adonai Ha'arza, Tibi Yoshai. Isa Racham and Tanotzak. Drachei Darchenu Am B'chol Netivotei Shalom Hashivenu Adonai Lecha V'Nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, v'madirach Chirutei, v'yamlich Malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayecho Beit Yisrael, v'agalav Bizman Kariv, v'yimru Amen, Yehi Shemei Rabbah V'vorach, le'olam v'mei Amaya, Yivarach v'yishtabach, v'yitparchim avid naseh, v'yitadar v'yitalav v'yitolal, shmenu gudusha richu, v'lam v'gol b'chata, v'shir atad, v'shav v'nechmatad, amiran be'ama, v'yimeru Amen. Amidah said in a quiet whisper, beginning 223, make inclusions for the Ya'alev Yavo and 227 for Chol HaMoed Sukkot. repetition, the Amidah begins 223 in the Lev Shalem through the Kedusha on 225. Adonai, Tzvatai, Tach, Fi Yagid, Tilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov El Hagdol Hagibor v'Yanarel Elyon Gmel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Yaakov v'Zocher Chastei Avot u'Mevi Goel Levnei V'Nehem L'man Shemo B'Yava Melech Ozer Moshiach Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Abraham Hagibor Le'Lam Adonai Mechei Mitim Atarav Lo Shi Marid Atal Mechalkel Chai Mechesed Mechei Mitim Rachamim Rabim Samech Tomchim V'Pech Olim Atir Asurim Mekayim Anatol Shnei Afar Milchama Chabal Gvarot Midom Melech Melech Me'Midum Chayim Asmiach Yeshua V'Naman Tal Chayot Meitim Baruch Atah Adonai Mechayei HaMeitim. Kadesh Shemcha B'Olam Kashem Shemat Hashem Oto B'Shmei Marom Kakdu Yad Neviach V'Kara Zeh El Zeh V'Yamar Kadosh 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 Adonai Tzvaot Moloch Ha'aretz Kivado Lo Matam Baruch Yomeru Baruch Adonai Min Kamodi Reikot Shecha Katu Lemor Yim Lo Adonai Leolam Elohai Tzion Ledor Vador Hallelujah Ledor Vador Nagi Golech Halenetzach Nesachim Kushelcha Nagdish Shivchacha Eloheinu Mipino Lemosh Leolam Vaed Kemal Kadosh V'Kadosh Ata Baruch Atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh Ata Echad V'Shimcha Echad Umi Keyamcha Yisrael Umi Keyamcha Keyamecha Yisrael Koy Echad Ba'aretz Tiferet Gedula Ba'ateret Yeshua Yom Menucha Uktusha Le'amcha Natata Yom Menucha Uktusha Le'amcha Natata Avraham Yagel Yitzchak Yiraden Yaakov ubanav Yanuchubo Yaakov ubanav Yanuchubo Menuchat Ava Unedava Menuchat Emet V'Yemuna Menuchat Shalom V'Shalva V'Hashked V'Betach Menuchat Shalom V'Shalva V'Hashked V'Betach Menuchat Shalema Shatarot Sebah Yakiru Vanecha V'Edu Ki Midchahi Menuchatam V'Yam Menuchatam Yakdishu Et Shemecha Eloheinu Levateinu Zev Menuchatenu Kachenu Mitzvotecha V'Tenu Chalkenu B'Toratecha Sabenu Mituvecha V'Samchenu B'Shuatecha V'Tar Libeinu Lavdecha B'Yemet V'Nchilenu Eloheinu B'Avav Ratzon Shabbat Kodechecha V'Nuchu V'Ah Yisrael Mekadosh Shemecha Baruch Atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat V'Tzei Adonai Eloheinu B'Yamcha Yisrael Abid Bilatam V'Yeshev Avodah B'Ir Betecha V'Yishay Yisrael Tfilatam V'Yivah Tfil Ratzon Tfil Ratzon Tamid Avidah Yisrael Amecha Eloheinu V'Levoteinu Yalev V'Vov Yagia V'Yirav Yiratzeh V'Shamai V'Plakei V'Zacher Zichron V'Gdonenu V'Zichron Avoteinu V'Zichron Mashiach Ben David Adecha V'Zichron Shalom Yirkochecha V'Zichron Kol Amcha B'Yisrael Lefanecha Lepleital Tova L'chein L'chesed L'rachmim L'chaim Shalom Yom Chag HaSukkot Hazeh Zochrenu Eloheinu Bo L'Tova Ufogdeinu Bo L'Racha V'Oshienu Bo L'Chaim Ubidvar Shor Rachamim Chus V'Chanin Rachem Len V'Oshienu Ki L'Chainenu Ki Melachanu Rachumata V'Techazena Einenu B'Shuchal Tziyom B'Rachamim Baruch Atah Adonai HaMachazir Shechinato L'Tzion Modim Atov kilo chalo racham mechem rachim kilo tama chasadechem yolam kibinu lach v'yal kulam yiparach v'tram shulcham al kinot tamil le'olam ved chol achem yidu chasel la ve'lo et shimcha b'met el yeshuatenu ve'ezotenu sela baruch Atah Adonai Atov shimcha lachana el hodot Shalom Rav Yisrael chatasim le'olam yotam melech adon lechol ha'shalom v'tov beinecha levarechem chayisho b'chol ed v'chol sha'ab b'shlamecha Baruch Atah Adonai Hambarechet Amo Yisrael B'Shalom Yikadav Yikadav Shemir Rabba V'madi Rachadi V'michmachodev V'chayachon Av Yomei Chon V'chaytachol Beisol V'galav Yizman Kariv Yimru Amen Yehesh Meram Barach Le'olam Le'omel Mayad Barach V'shtabach V'dparch Rabbi Minasev V'tadav V'talev V'talav Shkena Kodesh Sharichu V'lam Yikol B'chatav V'shir Taz V'tav V'nechmatad Damiran V'yom Avimru Amen Tikabel Tzotona V'aton V'choy Shel Kadav V'hondi V'shmaya V'imru Amen Yehesh Lam Rabba Min Shemaya V'chayim Alenu V'choy Shel V'imru Amen Oseh Shalom Ramav, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, B'meru Amen. We rise for Aleinu, Aleinu l'shabeyach, Ladon HaKol HaTekula, l'Sereshit. Hu Eloheinu, Einu Adem Malkeinu, Kakatuba Tortech, Adonai Loch Lilam, V'namar Vayad Adonai Melech Kol Haaretz Bayom Ahu, Hiye Adonai Echad, U'Shemo Echad, Kaddish Atom Mourners Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah. Bialma divrach hirutei biamlich malchutei. B'chai echon u'vyom echon u'b'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Bagala u'bizman kari v'imru. Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevorach le'olam le'omel maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach. Yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. Yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal. Shemei dekudusha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata dushbachata v'nechamata namiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom miramav uyaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Again, good Shabbos, everyone. Those who are here in person, please take some food for Sudash Lishit. Those here on Zoom will be starting the teaching in about 7 minutes, so just hang on. We'll let people have a chance to get some food here.
Yeah, there's a source sheet sent out. No, I mean it was emailed out. So like, I was supposed to study. No. They'll hand it out again. But the point is, I was supposed to read it before. No, you weren't. But the point is, there's definitely a topic. Okay. Because it was already like, but it's probably that pile emailed out a blank document. Did you open it? No. Also, thoroughly fact check.
wrote all through the audience. I like that. Yeah, thank God for Social Security. So like, getting a lot more, but it worked for 3 years for that. Oh, yes. So now I know that green is called Chamenets. Chaman. That's a green. Unfortunately, I got too much weight. And then several days out. And the day it is. You at 5 million? Yeah. Yeah, what? Yeah. I read everything. Chapter.
I don't think I've ever been early before.
Yeah.
Right.
Bilingual.
Yeah.
I got it. Very nice. How you this morning?
Okay, we're gonna get started in just a minute, so finish getting your food. It should be right there, Joan, right in front of you, on the table. It was given to you. Here, there's plenty. I think Steve, you have one. Sandra, do you have one? Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You know, the clergy at Temple Beth Am, we work very closely with each other. We collaborate all the time, but we don't necessarily share everything that we do when the other ones are not present. I mean, there's just not necessarily any reason to. Like if Rabbi Schatz is not at shul on Friday night when I give a drash, I don't download to her what I've said. When the Shabbat bulletin went out yesterday, and my source shut sheet went out for those people who are joining on Zoom, Rabbi Schatz clicked on my source sheet just to see what I was teaching, and by a very weird coincidence, we not only chose the same verse from Zohar Bracha, but the same commentary by Rabbi Ovadia Sforno on that verse. So who was here last week? All right, so you're going to be an expert. So Irv's going to teach this class. But there are a lot of verses in the Torah and a lot of commentary is verse, and I've done some different things with it, but it's very interesting that we're both drawn to the same commentary by Sforno. In a short little shiur, through really one verse of the Zohar HaBracha, I want to spin out two of the primary ways that our tradition understands what it means to be close to God, right? That's a very loaded statement because does anyone really know what it means to be close to God? You know, we don't have a singular way of defining that, but our tradition lays out a roadmap for what it means to be able to say you're a person that God is close to. And we're going to do it through a commentary by Sforno and some of the Talmudic texts that he references, and then a comment by the Ramban. And I guess as we're going through this, I want you to ask yourself, which of these modes, if any, is the one that most speaks to you in terms of your Jewish life and your goal in Jewish life, which I imagine part of your goal of Jewish life is to get closer to the Holy One. Like it's, again, we've talked about this all the time. It's not just a club. So it might be a Sisyphean task in the sense that we're never all the way at the top of the mountain. But part of the reason we're doing this is because we want to have some kind of a relationship with a spiritual realm. Which of these two modalities most speaks to you, if either? Could be none. Okay, so at the very, very end of Parshat V'zot Bracha and the end of the Torah, I think this is the anti-penultimate verse of the Torah, but maybe the penultimate. I don't remember which one. I don't know if the last verse is 11 or 12, but someone who could open the Chumash and tell me. The Torah describes Moshe in the following way. Below kam navi od b'Yisrael. No other prophet arose in Israel, Kim Moshe, like Moses. He was unique. In what way? Asher yida'o Adonai, that God yadad, I'm going to untranslate that for a second, that God yadad, panim el panim, face to face. We always have the translation problem. What do we think the word yada means? No, right? Ani yodeya in modern colloquial Hebrew means I know something. Usually has to do with a fact, right? A piece of information. What does yada mean in biblical Hebrew? What are the possibilities of what yada could mean? Know intimately, either carnally, right? Or know something not like you know that the square footage of a room that's 20 by 30 is 600. That's not necessarily biblical yediah. Biblical yediah is some deep awareness of the other or of some reality. So it seems to be that we're describing here that in what made Moshe unique, what made Moshe unique was that God knew him. Really interesting. You might have read this verse several times before and thought what you were reading is that what made Moshe unique is that Moshe knew God. But the way the grammar works is that what made Moshe such that no other prophet would ever approach that level is that God knew him, panim el panim, face to face. Before we look at this forno, any reactions or comments to that verse, which you've heard many times in your life, but as you're reading it now, what comes up to you? Yes, Joey.
I'm going to say that
And I'll repeat what people say on the Zoom, everybody.
right the first time it's the anti-penultimate verse you were referring to.
It's the anti-penultimate verse. Thank you. Any reactions to what this verse means as you're reading it? Oops. Can't lean on this. As you're reading it now? Yes, Sandra? Good. So a great question to ask on this verse is, what are we supposed to do with this kind of rank anthropomorphism of describing God as having a panim? It's not the only place, of course, in Torah where the very bodiless God is described with body parts, but this is a pretty straightforward one. I'll just pause and say this is not an answer to your question, but remember that panim in Hebrew means face. It also means like the insides of something, right? Like it's one of the great Hebrew words that means its own antonym, right? Like kedem means before and after. Kadima, moving forward, kedem is as it was. Panim means the external, and pnima means what's on the inside. So panim al panim probably means face to face, and it's almost always translated that way, but it could also have to do with like internal reality against internal reality. Sandra again, and then Ben. Yes, there are other places where the Torah talks about panim al panim, and we'll get to that in some of the comments that we read. Ben. Good. So what Ben is quoting is actually one of the verses that we read this morning in Parshat Ki Tisa, Lo tuchal lirot et panai, when God is asked by Moses, I want to see all of you, I want to see your glory, I want to be exposed to you. God says, thanks, but no, right? Lo yirani hadam v'chai, a person cannot see me and continue living. So lo tuchal lirot et panai, you can't see my face. So in the moment that Moshe requests, God says no, but now, we talk about an Escher painting. Who's speaking this verse? Moshe, because it's Varim. So Moshe is sort of speaking this verse about him. But it's God, Moshe expressing God's perspective on this relationship. And now it seems to suggest that there was a knowledge panim al panim, at least that way. At least there was panim al panim where you could resolve that. I'm not saying it's a good resolution. That yes, Moshe could not see God's face, But God saw Moshe's face. How? Panim al panim, right face to face. So that there was an intimacy from God to Moshe. But the question is better than the answer. Anything else on the verse? Yeah, Mike, Jonah. Correct. Very good. So Jonah is reminding us that in the scene when Miriam speaks poorly of Moshe and then is punished for it, God basically says to Miriam and to Aaron, like, whatever you are, you don't rise to the level of your brother. To you, I speak in chidot, in puzzles, in riddles. But God, I speak. Rabbi Schatz, God, right in time for me to use this forno that you wrote last week. God, Moshe, I speak face to face. So we're being reminded of that in this verse. Okay. The question that I want to deal with is, what is the content or the specificity of the uniqueness that Moshe attained with God, and which of those might be a model for us? Okay, so first, the Sforno. Sforno, Italian commentator, 16th century, on the phrase "Lokam navi od b'Yisrael k'Moshe," that there was no one else like Moshe. By the way, some of you may know that this phrase, that no one else like Moshe, became prominent again in the life of Maimonides, because I believe either on his gravestone or elsewhere it says "Mimoshe ad Moshe lokam k'mo Moshe," right? From Moses to Moses, because Maimonides' first name was Moses, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. From Moses to Moses sounds better in Hebrew than in English. There was no one like Moses, meaning except your grandson. Until the second coming of Moses was the Rambam. Humble he wasn't. By the way, apparently that was reinvigorated. What's that? And then I believe in the 19th century, I think that Moses Mendelssohn, Moses Montefiore, the philanthropist, said he was like, Mimoshe ad Moshe, lokam kmo Moshe ad Moshe. Like, I'm the third coming. Okay. Sforno. What does Sforno says it means? Lo higia shum navi lemadregat nevuoto. What does it mean? That no future prophet was able to arrive at his level of prophecy, a madrega as a level or a step. Uvazeh hitba'er. And through this verse, we can now understand better the following thing, which is a kind of a paraphrase from the Talmud, she'ein navi rashai lechadesh devar me'ata, that no prophet is permitted to enact anything new from this point forward, right? This is an understanding of Jewish law that valorizes the calcification of something back then, right? And by the way, every Jew does a version of it, right? So the Hasidic Jews are valorizing the dress of Polish noblemen in the 1700s, right? And Sforno is saying that the text is saying we valorize exactly things were when Moses lived. Of course, nothing is like the way Moses lived. And we do a version of it also. The next time you complain that someone's using a tune that's not the tune you grew up with, you're saying the exact same thing. It was supposed to stop evolving then when I was 23 years old, and there should be no chidush in Judaism. The Chatam Sofer of Moshe Sofer of Pressburg, he famously said, "Ein chadash asur min haTorah." He was making a pun on an agricultural rule about the new produce that can't be eaten until a certain date of the year, but he turned it into a halachic cultural rule. Chadash asur min haTorah. There are no more innovations. All the innovations that happened until the Chatam Sofer was alive was fine, but at this point, any new innovation is reform, right? God forbid. So, but before we finish this Sforno, turn the page and look at the Talmud that he's basing it on. So, interesting, worthy digression. This is Masechet Shabbat, page 104. Damar Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda said, Mem v'samech, that's how you write the letters, Mem and Samech. Mem v'samech shebaluchot b'neis hayu omdim. The Mem and the Samech in the actual Luchot Habri, what are they called? Tablets, thank you. We're standing in a miracle. Anyone have any sense what that means? They don't have legs. Say more. Correct. There's a tradition, to kind of lean into the suspend disbelief, that in Luchot Habrit, it wasn't like just a shallow carving of the letter, that the carver, the Holy One with the God's finger, carved all the way through the luchot. So you can carve all the way through an aleph and it'll be just fine. And you can carve all the way through a bet just fine. But you carve all the way through a mem, the center pops out, right? And you carve all the way through a samech, there's nothing holding in the O in the center of it. So Rabbi Chisda says, this is an easy one to resolve. It was a miracle, right? If God can create the world, it's not so hard to make a samach not fall over, okay? Ela satum asao patuach gru'e ka megarela. That if one then subsequently took a closed letter, like the closed mem, and turned it into an open letter, then you are degrading its sanctity because originally it was closed, turned open. Da'amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Yirmiyah said, Ve'itemi Rabbi Chia bar Abba, and some say it was another rabbi, Manspach Sofim Amarum. The prophets, the Talmud sometimes referred to the prophets not as Nevi'im, but Sofim, the one who could see in the future, they established Manspach. If you haven't looked over in English, what is Manspach? Which are significant because of what? They are sophites. We think of them as sophites, right? Rabbinic Judaism thought of them as two different ways of writing the letter: one closed, one open. So the mem that we know and love, the print mem, is open because it's opening there. That'll stay in the luchot. But the final, what we think of as a final mem, is closed, right? So think of all the ways in which the letters, like a tzadi, you take a print tzadi, it's not closed in the sense that it's all the way around, but it's compact. And what we think of as a final tzadi is that the leg got moved down, so opened up, right? Just put the details of that aside. Talmud is asking a halachic question on this about the chain of authority, but tizbra. Does that make sense that the later prophets would have had the audacity to change something as significant as the shape of the letters, v'hakativ? But it says, Elah hamitzvot. These are the commandments that Moses gave to the children of Israel. She'ein hanavi rashai lechadesh davar me'ata. No future prophet is allowed to change anything from that point forward. So, without spending too much time on that, this is the Talmud basically saying, this is what this Sforno was quoting, it shouldn't have been that Isaiah or Ezekiel, any prophet, changed something that Moshe did, and it shouldn't have been that the rabbis, who are actually writing this material, should have changed anything that Moses did. Of course, they think they are just unveiling what Moshe did, not changing it. Go back to Sforno. So the first thing Sforno is saying is that what does it mean to say that Moshe was unique? He was unique in that he was the last one to innovate. Moshe was the last conservative Jew. Al derech omram, and this is also similar to what they said, they meaning the rabbis of the Talmud, Ein Beit Din yechol levatel divrei Beit Din, one court cannot nullify the words of another court, Beit Din chaviro, its fellow court, ela imkain, unless gadol mimeno, unless the second court is bigger than it, b'chochma, in wisdom and in size, to suggest that if there's a ruling that a group of rabbis make, it stands for all time, unless another court can come along, which is greater in number, that gets to be a very large number, and greater in wisdom, who gets to decide, right? This is a classic question in Jewish law. Do today's rabbis properly arrogate to themselves the right to say that we are the inheritors of a tradition that is constantly evolving, and therefore we ought to evolve too? Or are we inheritors of a Sfornoistic tradition that says, stop, you're going to say you know more than Maimonides? You knew more than Rabbi Akiva? That's the apex of hubris, and that goes back all the way to Moshe. So if you could size up Sforno's understanding of what it meant that Moshe, to say that Moshe was unique and Moshe was special, how would you put it in a sentence? What is the value of this uniqueness? He's closest to God, and the reason why it's significant is for legal authority, right? This is not a pastoral, emotional text. This is a legal text. This is saying, in what way does the Zohar Bracha mean, v'lo kam navi od b'Yisrael k'Moshe? There will never be a greater legal authority than Moshe, and all of you people who think that you know something, you're nachschleppers, you know nothing, which means tread very, very carefully on the tradition, or with the tradition, because when you do it with a little bit too much chutzpah, you are undermining this verse from Parshat Varim, right? Now, again, what's internally contradictory about this is the rabbinic culture that is writing this material is the very culture that took apart all sorts of things and expanded all sorts of things and innovated all sorts of things. And that is an internal and unresolvable debate within rabbinic practice. Alan, question. I'm just gonna get some more water while you're asking the question. Yeah. So what Alan's saying is there's something internally reinforcing about this, that the rabbis of any generation that say, remember, we're not supposed to innovate, are actually protecting their individual rulings, right? Stevie?
I don't read it that way because you hear about other prophets. It's not about interpretation. I think they're saying that, like, if you're going to source something, it has to be sourced from Chumash, right? You can't quote, right, Mishlei, right? You can't quote, right, Shmuel in order to, like, create a halacha, right? Like,
maybe the first.
Are all in Chumash. That's where it stops.
What Stevie's saying is he reads it a little bit differently. I'm just repeating it for people on Zoom that maybe what the Sforno is saying is that you don't bring a verse from Isaiah or Mishlei to override a verse from Torah. Maybe the first thing that the Sforno says, but the Ein Beit Din Yachol Levatel Divrei Beit Din, that's basically saying, like, be very, very careful when you claim that you have the authority to overrule something that came before you. Okay, because I want to do that part 2, and we're running out of time. Let's go to. Oh yeah, so I brought you I was going to bring you the text from Masechet Megillah, which is where we get this notion that one Beit Din cannot uproot the precedents of a previous Beit Din unless they're bigger than them in number and wisdom. You can look at that your own, but I want to make sure we get to the Ramban because that's the counterpoint. Okay, Ramban, Spanish commentator, lived in the 13th century, so 200 years or so before the Sforno. So this idea precedes the one that we just read, but I wanted to bring the Sforno one first. The Yitachen, it makes sense. We're on the 3rd page of the document. Ki va'avor sheshnei anashim hamitraim panim al panim. You got two people who see one another, panim al panim, borrowing the phrase from a verse. Nodaim zelazeh b'riyah hahi. They get to know each other. If you go up really close and you stare at someone, or the panim al panim from the perspective of seeing someone's internal self, you're going to be known to the other. Amar, when the verse said, Yida'o Adonai panim al panim, that God knew him face to face, and remember what we discussed, what does the verse not say took place? That who didn't know whom? Did not say that Moshe knew God face to face. The Ramban picks up on that and says, Ki lo ratzah lahazkir, the text did not want to mention, Shi Yada'o Moshe came, that Moses knew God that way, lichvod shalmale. It would almost be like a diminution of God to suggest that Moshe knew God as well as God knew Moshe, going back to something that Ben said before, right? In fact, Moshe asked for that permission and God said no. So the first thing the Ramban deals with is that it seemed to be one-sided, and it's almost as if the Ramban is saying what it meant was that they knew each other panim al panim, but the Torah didn't want to mention it because that would be a dishonor to God. V'al titma, don't be so surprised, b'mesha amar b'shevech Moshe, about that which it said in praise of Moshe, Asher Yida'o Adonai Panim Al Panim. Don't be surprised that it described Moshe as being known by God face to face. Ve'amar, and it says elsewhere in the book of Exodus. Sorry, Zoomers, we have a loud helicopter or something. Sounds like a plane. V'diber Adonai al Moshe Panim Al Panim, that it says in the very verses that we from Parshat Kiti. So we actually didn't read those verses today, but it's in that section that God spoke to Moses Panim Al Panim. And the al titma, don't be surprised, he hasn't resolved that phrase yet. Don't be surprised that even though it said more than once regarding Moshe that he knew God panim al panim, uvachol Yisrael, and regarding all of the Jewish people, nemar gamkein, it also says regarding Israel that God spoke to them panim al panim. Where? Panim befanim deber Hashem imachem. In the 5th chapter of Darim, it says that God spoke to all of you, plural, Israel, face to face. don't be surprised. And what he means by don't be surprised is, if the verse that we're dealing with is showing Moshe's uniqueness, then don't be so surprised that it also describes all of Israel being able to speak to God face to face. Why should you not be surprised? Kisham be'er mitoch ha'esh. In the moments that all of Israel spoke to God face to face, it was mitoch ha'esh. It was out of the fire. It was mediated. They were close. They got pretty darn close. But there was some other medium that was getting in the way. Lomar, to say, shesham'u kolo, they heard God's voice, mitoch ha'esh, from the fire, bilvad, velo ra'u hapanim. They didn't see God's face, right? So even though it says panim al panim, he's resolving it. There, what it means is they got pretty close, but not like Moshe. Bi'al derech ha'emet, when the Ramban quotes derech ha'emet, he's referring to Kabbalah. Interesting. It doesn't mean, he's not just saying colloquially, and truly, that's his way of dipping into Kabbalistic sources. And by way of the truth, Sheyada'o Hashem panim al panim. In what way did God know Moshe face to face? Livdov kabo, to embrace him, to cling to him, to be close to him. Be'echetavo haruach b'Moshe Rabbeinu. What does it mean to be known by God face to face? That anytime Moshe said, "I want to conjure God right in front of me to have an intimate conversation," poof, God was there. God could be beckoned by Moshe, beckoned for a moment of spiritual, revelation. V'chein haya be'et matan Torah. That indeed was the case at the time of the giving of Torah for all of Israel. Aval lo hisigu heim ela lekol mitoch ha'esh. But in that situation, the rest of the people only achieved what God was all about through the voice coming from the fire. V'hine be'er shekol nevuotav shel Moshe. But any time that Moshe wanted to be in a prophetic moment, kiyom matan Torah, it was like the giving of the Torah. What was special about Moshe? Very different than Sforno. Not that Moshe could proclaim a law and it would stand forever, and you would shudder at the possibility of possibly innovating it. What was unique about Moshe? Every time Moshe davened, as it were, it was like Sinai. Every time Moshe wanted to be in the presence of God, God's presence descended upon the mountain, and it was like revelation again. The Sha'ar Nevi'im, the other prophets, they're pretty good. Hayta alehem yad Hashem v'havein zeh. For the other prophets had maybe the hand of God on them, meaning they had some kind of a positive thing, but not like Moshe. Two very different modalities understanding Moshe's uniqueness. On the one hand, he's the lawgiver, and don't you dare abrogate it. And when you are a rabbi, you're a Beit Din, you are inheritors of a tradition that has been very delicately and responsibly passing down Jewish practice. And that's a big thing, because if we didn't do it delicately and carefully, then our Jewish practice today would have nothing in common with Jewish practice 500 years ago. So, as a traditional conservative community, we hold on to that with some reverence, just not with utter reverence. And the Ramban saying, no, you get it all wrong. This doesn't have to do with legal authority. This is not about the transmission of practices. This has to do with spiritual intimacy, right? And trying to show that the ideal in Moshe is not that he was a powerful lawgiver, but that he could summon God when he wanted to summon God. That is a spiritual uniqueness as opposed to a legalistic one. Irv? Yeah. Well, right. And just in terms of the narrative, Moshe has an experience with God according to the Torah no one else has. But the question is, what is Moshe's legacy as unique, and which of those do we want to hold up as a model? And maybe it's both. Maybe we want to hold up as a model the notion of being able to help define Jewish practice for generations to come, holding on to Moshe's coattails and hoping that those who come after us will not do such damage and change to it. That's one way of preserving Judaism. What's another way of preserving Judaism? Raising children who believe that when they stand to pray, something's happening. That when they say Baruch Atah Hashem, it may not be a magical incantation, but it's not a nothing, and they can kind of aspire to a mosaic spiritual presence where no matter where they are, Mount Sinai is within reach. Right? So we're about to daven Maariv, Resi Birkat Hamazon. Are we going to feel it perfunctorily, or might we try to step into the shoes of Moses, the way the Ramban defines him and says, maybe God is present and we can beckon God as well. Shabbat Shalom. So now we're going to go to Birkat Hamazon. Joey, would you lead us? Okay. And then we'll do Maariv. Are there no benchers out? Okay. Page 87 in Lev Shalem. Go ahead, Joey.
Cholamim Azim Male Sichok Pinu Ulshonenu Rina Az Yomeruva Goim Igdil Adonai La Sotimele Igdil Adonai La Sotimanu Ainu Semechim Shuva Adonai Shuvitenu Ka'afikim Ba Negev Azorim Bedima Verina Yiktoru Alochele Chuvacho No Se Meshech Azara Bo Yavo Verina No Se Alumotav Tehilat Adonai Yedaber Pi Yivarech Kol Basar Shim Kol Cholil Ambad Va'anachu Nevarech Yah Me'ata V'ad Olam Hallelujah Odu Ladonai Ki Tov Ki Le'olam Chasto Mi Amalel Gevurot Adonai Yashmiya Kol Tehilato Chaverai Nevarech Yehi Shem Adonai V'rach Me'atav V'ad Olam B'yirshut Chaverai Derech Elohim Shechalnu Mishalo
Baruch Eloheinu shachanu mishalo tuvo chayinu.
Baruch Elohim Shechalnu Mishalo Tuvo Chayinu Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Hazan et HaOlam Kulo Betuvo Bechein Bechesed Uvrachamim Hu Notein Lechem Lechol Basar Ki Le'olam Chasto Uvtuvo Hagadol Tamid L'chasar Lanu Ve'ayachsar Lanu Mazon Lilam Va'ed Ba'avur Shemo Hagadol Kilo Zanim Farnes Lakol Umetiv Lakol Umechin Mazon Lechol Beriotav Asher Bara Baruch Atah Adonai Hazan et HaKol Nedech Adonai.
What number? What number?
I'll tell you in a second, because right now we're doing Birkat Hamazon, but I'll open up the Maariv for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Adonai shomer you.
What's that?
Adonai shomer you.
Adonai Shomer Alayach.
I don't even know if I love you.
Not yet. Two minutes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Baruch Atah Adonai.
We're going to say Kaddish to Rabbanan for the learning that we did on page 111. Gadal Yitgagash Shemei Rabbah Yalmad Ibrach Pirutei V'Amlich Malchutei Chayechon Yomechon Vayedecho Beit Yisrael Hagalav Yismach Karim Yimru Amen Yehei Shemei Rabbah Mevorach Le'olam Le'omei Omaya Barach V'Yishtabach Yitmachar V'Yitgafam V'Yitnatzei Yitmadar V'Yitaleh V'Yitalal Shemei Kedusha Prihu Min kol berchata v'shirata v'shvachata v'nechamata d'amirat be'alma v'meru amen al Yisrael v'al Rabbanan v'al Tamidehon v'al kol Tamidehon v'al kol man daskin v'oraita divi atra hadein v'kol atar v'atar yehei lahon uchon shlama rabba shina v'chista v'rachamin ayin arichin arabicha
Amen.
Hey, Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, Chaim Tovim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom V'ramav U'Vrachamav Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. We rise for Maariv Baruch Hu. It's on page 264 in the Lev Shalem, 200 in the Sim Shalom, and 281 in the Slim Shalom.
והורח יכפר עוון ולא ישחית, והרבה להשיבה פה ולא יאיר כל חמתו. אדוני הושיע מלך יעננו ביום קראנו. ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ומעביר יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה. אדוני צבאות שמו אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב הרבים. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו והם נגי יומם ולילה והבטחה אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים בני ישראל. לך אנו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם מי כמוכם.
Mi chamoch belim Adonai, mi kamoch nedar b'kodesh narati lo tosef ele malchut chara uvanech bokei yam lifnei Moshe ze Eli anu ve'amru Adonai imloch leolam va'ed v'namar kifat Adonai et Yaakov u'golo miyad chazak mimenu baruch atah Adonai ga'al Yisrael. Lishmor teitenu uvoinu l'chaim l'shalom yatav yad olam baruch atah Adonai shomer amo Yisrael la'ad. Baruch Adonai leolam, amen ve'amen. כי המלכות של חיים לא מעט תמלוך בכבוד, כי אין לנו מלך אלא אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני המלך בכבודו תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ועל כל מעשיו.
אמן.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועמד דברי חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב, אמרו
אמן.
אמן.
יהי שמי רבה מבורך, למאיה יתברך.
יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם לא מאומיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי דקדושה בריחו, לעילם עם כל ברכתה ושירתה, תשבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן.
In the quiet Amidah that begins on page 270, also make sure to add in the paragraph towards the end, the Ya'aleh V'Yavo paragraph, because we are still in the midst of Chol HaMoed Sukkot.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברך ירצה וימליך מלכותי בחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם לא מעלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילם מכל ברכתה ושירתה תשבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. תתקבל צלתנו ואותן דכל ישראל קדם ובוהנדי בשמיא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיא וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל. כתוב בתורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
And for the penultimate time of the season, we turn back to page 59 and recite Psalm 27. The last time we'll say it is tomorrow morning at the end of services on Hoshana Rabbah.
David Adonai Orivi Shimi Mira Adonai Miami Mi Evchan. Ki avivi mi asavuni Adonai Asvin Ulemanti Lerat Betuv Adonai Be'eretz Chaim Ki Kave El Adonai Chazak V'Yamitz Libecha V'Kave El Adonai Yitkadal V'Yitkadash Shemei Rabbah Be'alma Divrach Yirtei V'Yamlich Malchutei בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם לעולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילם מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה בחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Shakoach, Sandra. We're just going to wait a second to get some grape juice because I don't rather not do Havdalah on 7-Up. It is a tradition in some communities, Erev Hoshana Rabbah, to do Havdalah on 7-Up, but not us. Thank you, Raul. Oh, very nice. Shkoyach. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jim. If you'd like, you don't have to, but you can come close. It's up to you. Harashut b'yedchem. Oh. There are a lot of 7s hovering, huh? Inne el Yeshuati Yaftach velo Efchad Ki Azim Ezimrad Yad Adonai Vayehi Li Lishua Ujav Demayim Bisason Mimaynei Yeshua L'Adonai Yeshua Alamcha Birchatecha Sela Adonai Tzvaot Imanu Miskav Lanu Elohei Yaakov Sela Adonai Tzevaot Ashrei Adam Botei Yabach Adonai Yoshia Hamelech Yaneinu V'yom Koreinu La Yehudim Hayta Ora V'simcha v'sason v'yakar kein tiyeh lanu kos Yeshuot esa u'v'shem Adonai ekra Yadonai 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 Baruch atah Adonai Mecholam Borei Pragafen Baruch atah Adonai Mecholam Borei Minei B'samim Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei miorei ha'esh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam mavdil ben kodesh l'chol ben or l'choshech ben Yisrael amim ben yom hashvi l'sheshim me'hamaseh. Baruch atah Adonai mavdil ben kodesh l'chol Hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol Chatoteinu yimcho Zareinu bechaspeinu yarbe yarbe kacho Bekahakov ravim balayla Zareinu bechaspeinu yarbe yarbe kacho Bekahakov ravim balayla Eliyahu Hanavi Eliyahu Atishbi Eliyahu Hanavi Eliyahu Agi Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Atishbi, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Agila. Oy b'meira yavo elenu, Mashiach ben David b'meira yavo elenu, Mashiach ben David. Shavua Tov, everyone. Moadim l'simcha. Hoshana Rabbah Sameach. Chag Sameach for tomorrow night. See you soon. See you frequently. Go Juntiv, go Dodgers, go Yankees. All the appropriate salutations.
I'm glad you brought it over here.
Nice to daven outside, huh?